Just say it, man. Don't make me ask 20 questions.
What is the point?
Get to the point.
Just say it already.
Welcome to the Podcram. More pieces of the twisted puzzle coming at you, this time from Safe Water Calgary's Dr. Robert Dickson on the Shaun Newman Podcast, number 748.
On the website, 1945, Grand Rapids, Michigan became the first community in the world to add fluoride to tap water on the premise it would prevent tooth decay. I assume you know the history of...
It actually started in the early 1900s when dentists in the United States found kids with really brown teeth in Colorado and in Texas. And then they looked at them closer and they went, well, these kids have no cavities. They got brown mottled teeth, but they have no cavities. And so they dug into that and they found that they had high levels of natural calcium fluoride in the water, which the entire Earth has calcium fluoride in the Earth's crust and in the groundwaters. And it's tightly bound. Fluoride is tightly bound to calcium, but it's still dangerous. It's still toxic. And in higher levels, it will really wreak havoc. Those brown teeth are the first signs of actually whole body toxicity. And so these kids are having toxification not only in their teeth, but in their brains and their pineal gland and in other parts of their bodies too. If you look at places in China and India that have high calcium fluoride in their groundwaters, they have younger people that are essentially crippled with skeletal fluorosis. They're bent over, hunched over, they can't walk very well, they can hardly move, and they're not doing very well. And of course, the IQ studies that have come out of China for many years, well, that's a foreign place, they don't do it like we do. Right, they have high calcium fluoride, and they've done the studies, and there's some smart people there, and they found some pretty major decreases in IQ there. So natural calcium fluoride is not safe. So then around World War I, before the start of World War II, I should say, in the 1930s, the aluminum industry was having a big problem because they were producing a lot of aluminum back in the day, and they were pouring out hydrofluorosilicic acid, which is the waste product from aluminum processing and fertilizer processing. And around these aluminum plants, plants were dying, animals were dying, workers were getting sick, and so they had to find a way to whitewash fluoride. So that was kind of the start of it, in my opinion, where government agencies or businesses got into whitewashing it. World War II they needed huge amounts of fluorine gas to make the atom bomb. And again, if you're making fluorine gas, you're spewing out some of the waste products and some of the excess. And so it came to be a collusion in the 40s of military, medical, and industrial. So those three powers: medical, industrial, and military. Then after World War II is when those studies started that you talked about. And it was Newburgh and Kingston, so one fluoridated and one not. And they didn't finish the study. Again, very typical of how pro-fluoridationists operate. They cherry-picked and used that study, just that one study, didn't even finish it, to say that, fluoride is safe and effective for kids. Now, we should backtrack just a little bit. Does the name Edward Bernays ring a bell to you? Bernays? He was the founder of modern-day propaganda. He actually wrote a book called Propaganda in 1929. And he was hired by the cigarette companies, by the tobacco companies, to whitewash smoking. And well, you probably weren't around in the 30s, but there's lots of evidence to note that the cigarette companies used Edward Bernays' campaign and propaganda to have doctors sitting in their office in their white coats with a cigarette and telling a pregnant woman that, yes, you should be smoking during your pregnancy because it relaxes you more and helps you through your pregnancy and you'll come out with a healthier baby. That was Edward Bernays. He was so successful with that campaign that the fluoridation industry hired him after, in the 1940s, late 1940s. And sure enough, by 1950, he had letters, thousands of letters going out to doctors and dentists, mostly in the States, some in Canada though. And afterwards, he admitted that was the easiest program he'd ever had in his entire life, was to convince doctors and dentists that fluoride was safe and effective for kids. And to this day, that propaganda is standing, safe and effective. So that's kind of in a nutshell how it came about.
So you got this World War II going on. You got, we're trying to build the A-bomb, et cetera, et cetera. You got these products that they can't get rid of, are causing a lot of problems, health problems. And they're like, well, how can we take something bad and turn it into something good? We'll put it in people's drinking water. It'll make their teeth white. I don't know. I don't even know. Does it make the teeth white? I don't know.
No,
this is where I don't know.
Makes them brown. So the problem is
Fluoride makes the teeth brown?
well,
This is going back to your Colorado thing.
if you have too much of it. So what hydrofluorosilicic acid pumped into so that comes straight out of the fertilizer stacks in Florida, China, Mexico. None of it's cleaned in any of those countries. It comes into holding tanks because it's scrubbed out of the stacks because it's not allowed in the air, in the ground, or in any of the rivers, lakes, streams, or oceans. Not allowed anywhere by strict law. So they have to put it in these holding tanks, and then they developed this way to convince people in communities it was good and safe and effective for water fluoridation.
I'm going to stop you for 1 second. I want to make sure my brain heard all that correct. It's not pretty much allowed anywhere in the world. We got to put it in holding tanks because it can't go in lakes, rivers, streams, ponds,
right.
Ground, air, oceans. And
Right.
yet they convinced us monkeys that putting it in our drinking water was a smart thing. I just want to make sure I heard that correct.
Instead of them having to dispose of it in plants like our Swan Hills plant up north, that costs a huge amount of money to correctly dispose of toxins. So they'd have to pay a lot of money per ton to dispose of that, or they sell it to us, put it in our city water, and get paid for it, and you and I get to dispose of it in our bodies. Isn't that a great end around, eh?
You're making me want to start drinking something different real fast. Okay, carry on with this.
Yeah. So it is just the hydrofluorosilicic acid mainly that comes out. That's the main byproduct. But it comes along. If you're drilling and you're crushing up rocks for fertilizer, for phosphate fertilizer, or you're smelting aluminum or whatever, there's other smaller entities that come along, like lead, like arsenic, like mercury, strontium, bromium, cadmium, trace elements, but that's not cleaned out. If you brush your teeth with fluoride, it's going to be sodium fluoride. That's cleaned, that's purified, that's regulated, that's monitored. None of the stuff that comes into our drinking water is clean or purified or monitored. So that in itself should be just a major alarm bell. And I'm going to segue quickly into something else because if you put it in your water, you can't control dose or dosage. You drink 10 glasses, I drink one, you get 10 times the dose. No control. Oh, good people, we're lowering the concentration. We're controlling the concentration at 0.7 parts per million. That has nothing to do with dose or dosage. Any medical person will tell you that, and a lot of lay people can too. You drink 10, I drink one, you're getting 10 times the dose. And if you put it in water, if you try to medicate with water, what happens? Well, we drink maybe one, at most 5%. Let's even give them 10%. So 90% of water goes back out into our rivers, lakes, and streams unchecked with the rest of the hydrofluorosilicic acid that we didn't sequester in our bodies. It goes into nature, into the environment unchecked. The environmentalists should be raging about this.
In toothpaste, what does fluoride do?
I'm not a dentist, but what it does is kind of replaces the calcium hydroxide with fluoroapatite, and it strengthens the tooth. It makes it stronger. Now, if you look at that, or if you just listen to that, it sounds okay. And it also decreases some of the bacteria in the mouth that cause cavities. But it's a fairly infrequent thing. Water fluoridation has a very low concentration, and so it just swishes through your mouth, and most people don't drink much water during the day, so that has very little effect on the topical part of the tooth. But the activity is mostly topical, so it makes the tooth stronger. Now, do you necessarily want your pipe stronger? Or do you want it a bit more pliable? Do you want to hit that sweet spot where it's not too soft, not too strong, and bends and flexes and doesn't break easily? You make things too strong, they're more brittle, and they're easier to break. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's what happens to teeth too. If you put too much fluoride on, it makes them, you get fluorosis, those first signs of like white streaks and then yellow and then brown mottling that I spoke about earlier. And we should touch on that one a bit more too. But you get too much fluoride in the system, it hardens the teeth. And after a long time of chewing and biting and doing things with your teeth maybe you shouldn't, your teeth will break. And if you look at, here's a fact that should just wipe fluoride right off the map. Kentucky and Louisiana, the two most fluoridated states in the U.S., 98, 99% fluoridated. They have the highest edentulous rate, which means loss of teeth. So the highest fluoridated states have the highest loss of teeth. They get brittle, they break, they have to have them pulled, they get their implants and their dentures and such. The lowest fluoridated state in the U.S., Hawaii, has, guess what? The lowest edentulous rate, the lowest loss of teeth. Shouldn't that right there say to you that fluoride is not working for our adults and seniors? All the processed foods and packaged foods and things that are shaved off chicken bones and teas concentrate fluoride. There's so many things out there that have fluoride in them. They spray a lot of the vegetables to keep them from ripening as they transport them with sulfonal fluoride. It just goes on and on. Like fluoride is ubiquitous. So it's in a lot of things already in our society. And then if we put hydrofluorosilicic acid on top of that, it really whacks the system. It really puts you over the top. So hydrofluorosilicic acid or fluoride in our city waters or our town waters is the biggest contributor to our fluoride load. But all these other things help along. They take us over the top. So we don't need fluoride now. We got it in the toothpaste. It's topical. It does not one single thing for body function. Fluoride is not necessary.
So I can't even say the word, unfluoridated countries. There we go. So here's the countries that don't have any fluoride in their water. Austria, Belgium, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Switzerland, Sweden, Norway, Netherlands, Japan, Italy, Iceland. Here's the country, and now I assume there's more. I'm assuming that's not the only ones. Here's 95. The big ones that do. Australia at 80%, Canada at 38%, New Zealand at 61%, United States at 64%, and England at 11%. Now Ireland's 100%, and it says Spain at 11%. Here's what sticks out to me about those stats on the countries that are fluoridating. That's the Five Eyes countries. Mm-hmm. And you start digging into those. Like, I don't like doing the tinfoil hat thing, but it just keeps presenting itself. Australia 80%, United States 64%. What is it doing? It's hurting your population. Why are no other countries doing that? That doesn't make sense.
Well, just to crunch those numbers down a little easier for the folks, it's 95% of the world is not fluoridated. So we in Calgary have been accused of being the what would you call it? The laggards, I guess, the people that aren't in the know. We're not coming up to modern times. Well, 95% of this is not fluoridated. As I mentioned, over 99% of Quebec, 98% of BC, 97% of Europe, which is what you were, the numbers, the countries you were talking about there. That's 97% of Europe is not fluoridated. Not, folks. And their teeth are not falling out in the streets.
Yeah, we can all make fun of the English's teeth all we want. Yeah. I want to go back to Edward Bernays. Who were the people that hired him? Was that the aluminum factories that said we need you to change the thought process on this, or was it something different than that? Who is hiring him to sell this idea?
It was a conglomeration, as I mentioned before. Dr. Hodge was one of the main ones, and Dr. Dean, Tremley Dean. And you can see some old, on our websites, like on Safe Water Calgary and Flouride Free Canada and Flouride Action Network. You can find some old videos of these people and of some of the people that fought against them too, but many of the people that promoted it.
Thanks for listening to this installment of The Podcram. I hope it contains something useful for you. If you enjoy these selections and are curious about the curator's own thoughts, you can check out my other podcast, Psychic Lube, where I share concise concepts meant to grease the intellectual gears and help get your creative juices flowing. Each episode is an ongoing collaborative project that welcomes listeners to expand or rebut its points by email or comment, the most interesting of which get incorporated through periodic re-recordings. As always, if you're intrigued by today's content, I encourage you to go listen to the full podcast in its original form directly from its creators so that their sponsors keep paying them to make stuff for us and nobody feels compelled to sue me for copyright infringement. Now, get off your phone and go do smart stuff. Have a productive day.